Hello everyone, my name is Ian, you're watching Big Rock Moto, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Triumph have used the Tiger name for a very long time. In fact, believe it or not, they've been using it for 85 years, going all the way back to around 1937. Now granted, a lot has changed since 1937, but they're still putting the Tiger name on some of their best motorcycles. To give you some background before we go any further in this video, I do have experience with Triumph motorcycles, and especially with Triumph's 3-cylinder engine. And I can definitely tell you that my 2007 Tiger 1050 with a 1050cc inline 3-cylinder engine was one of my favorite street motorcycles pretty much of all time that I've personally owned. I really miss that bike. I love the engine character, I love the sound, I love the way it handled, I love the way it looked. And overall, it was one of the best bikes that I've remember owning, and I've had over 30 different bikes. So with bikes like Triumph's own Street Triple, and of course their Speed Triple as well, going up in engine size and going up in price and performance, it leaves an unfilled area of a more budget-oriented bike for people who don't need such a high level of performance and who don't want to pay between $10,000 and $15,000 or even more dollars for a bike in that category. So on the surface, this bike, Triumph's Tiger Sport 660, seems to have something for everybody. It's got a very playful 660cc inline 3-cylinder engine. It's got an upright, comfortable riding position, a wide, comfortable seat that's low enough to the ground that's not going to intimidate people who are a little bit shorter. It's got super agile handling from its 17-inch wheels. It's got an adjustable windshield, great wind protection. It's got a large fuel tank. What is not to like? Is this the total package, and who is this bike for? And of course, we have to talk about the price. At just over $9,000 US, this is a very, very compelling motorcycle at this price point. I would dare you to find a motorcycle that does everything this bike does better for around this amount of money. So I think Triumph did a very, very good job coming in at that price point, sub $10,000 US. So here's how I'm going to break down this video today. I'm going to take you on a tour of the bike, show you all of its features and specs. I'm going to show you the riding position. Then we're going to take it out on the highway and give you the full experience of riding this bike. Then we're going to even take it off-road. Even though this is not really designed to go off-road, we're going to do that anyway. Then we'll come back here. We'll talk about the competitors to this bike and how they stack up. We'll talk about what I love, what I don't like, and then we'll have some final thoughts. So with that, let's go for a ride. All right, so first let's show the riding position and the seat height and everything like that. So the seat height is 32.9 inches. I'll put the millimeters here, which is, pretty low, but it's higher than some bikes because it is an adventure style bike. So when I go ahead and sit on the bike here, you can see the riding position. So you can see the bend in my leg is not very much bend. There's a lot of leg room. And in terms of the riding position, you can see I have a very slight forward lean, but I have plenty of room and it's comfortable. This would be a comfortable position for me to ride in touring all day long. In terms of the seat comfort, I don't know. That would take more time to evaluate. The handlebar's wide. So overall, I'm very, very happy with the riding position. Now I am 5'11", and I'll put the centimeters here. I think it's 180. And I can flat foot both feet on the ground on this bike. I think if you're under 5'6" maybe, you might feel the bike is a little bit tall. But if you're like 5'5", give or take, or over, I think you're going to be probably okay with the seat height of the bike. Okay, let's talk about the specs and features and give you a tour around the Triumph Tiger Sport 660. Let's start with the engine. What you're looking at is Triumph's famous inline 3-cylinder engine. It's 659cc, and in this platform here it makes 80 horsepower, 47 foot-pounds of torque, and it has a compression ratio of around 12:1. That's hooked up to a 6-speed, very smooth shifting transmission with a slipper assist clutch, which is very nice to have, and of course it uses a chain final drive. Let's talk about suspension on this bike. So what you have is just under 6 inches of travel, both at the front and at the back. The suspension is by Showa. You can even see the sticker here. There really are no adjustments on the front suspension, and on the rear suspension what you do have is a single adjustment. It's just going to be a preload. You can see there's a remote preload knob right here, which is nice. If you want to ride with a passenger or luggage, you can crank up that hydraulic preload assist. But there's no other adjustments besides that. For wheel sizes, this is a street bike for sure, and you're looking at 17-inch front and 17-inch rear wheels. You have a 120 section front tire, and you have a 180 section rear tire. And this bike comes equipped, at least for this model year, with Michelin, I think they're Road 5s, but I'll correct that here if I'm wrong. It's a very nice street tire. Let's talk about the braking. So you have twin 310 millimeter rotors here. You can see the ABS ring attached there. And then the brakes are by Nissan, and they're 2 piston calipers on each side. So they're not 4 pistons like you would get on a more expensive bike. So altogether, you've got in the front, you've got a total of 4 pistons happening between the 2 sides. And the braking is pretty respectable. It's a little bit of a budget braking system, but the bike is not very heavy, and it seems to work very well. In the back, you have what looks like a single piston caliper and a 255 millimeter rear disc rotor. Let's talk about dimensions and weights real quick here. The fuel tank is 4.5 gallons. The seat height is just under 33 inches. It's this nice kind of dished out saddle here. And the wet weight of the bike, meaning fully fueled up, is 454 pounds. And finally, the MSRP on the Tiger Sport 660 in the US for the 2022 year is $9,295, which is quite a bargain for what you're getting. Okay, so let me take you on a little quick tour around the bike first. You've got these really nice sharp looking twin LED headlights with these little running lights here. You can see I've activated the hazard lights, and they're a nice sleek looking clear LED turn signal that looks very nice. You have a very stylish front fender with the Triumph logo here. You can see the radiator behind here. Looks like they're using stainless steel brake lines, not rubber, so that's kind of a nice touch. Also in the front, you will notice this pretty large windshield with a vent here to reduce buffeting. And to adjust the windshield, you simply grab this bar and push it up and down, which is an amazing feature, one of my favorite things about this bike. Coming around the sides, you can see you've got kind of these side radiator covers that are part of the styling of the bike, and the Tiger logos. You can see the 3 exhaust headers coming out down here. They have a little crossover pipe, and the exhaust exits down here under the swing arm. And so the catalytic converter and everything is down in here. The engine casings and everything are very nicely finished. They look very, very premium, especially at this price point. You can see the frame here, which is painted black, passenger foot pegs, which are removable with these bolts right here. You can see the driver's pegs. There's the passenger pegs as well. Looks like some sort of mounts for luggage. I know they do offer hard luggage that goes on this bike. Coming around back here, we talked about the brakes already. The rear shock, the rear fender, which is pretty sleek and pretty sturdy, and comes back here with a license plate. You can see you've got a LED rear light, and of course the LED blinkers in the back, just like you have in the front. And then coming around this side, we have the chain drive. It uses an X-ring chain. You can see that hydraulic preload adjuster for the rear shock, passenger pegs, shift lever, the kickstand, which puts the bike at a good angle. It doesn't lean too much, like some bikes I've tested recently. You can see this bike has this really nice, beautiful red paint, and they kind of have these decals on the tank here, which are under the paint, so they won't come off. You can see the scooped out seat. There's not much room here for a passenger, but that's pretty typical on a bike, sporty bike like this, of this size. Alright, so let's jump on, give you a quick tour of the cockpit and the controls. So what you have, the clutch lever, it's a cable clutch, not hydraulic, and there's no adjustment there for the reach. However, the brake lever does have looks like a 5-position adjustment there for your reach. The controls, you've got a left-hand switch gear. This will control some of your readouts here, your different trip meters, menus, gauge brightness, different things you can go through to select. You have a 4-way keypad, then you have a set button. You have your turn signals here, which is the soft touch button. Down under here, you've got the mode button, the riding mode button, so you can do different riding modes depending on what you want to do. I think there's rain and road come standard. Then you've got a little horn there, typical horn. Right hand switch gear, very simple. You've got your kill switch and your engine start stop switch. Pretty effective mirrors that stick out here, and they're a nice design. We talked about the windshield. One thing I love is just adjust the windshield. There you go. Put it down. There you go. You can do it while you're riding. Great design. I wish others would follow suit with that design. The dashboard, it's a little bit small. We'll talk about that. The readouts, like the tachometer, I mean, everything's here. Tachometer, fuel gauge, gear position indicator, speedometer, different trip meters, fuel status, different indicator lights here. It looks good, but it's just all a bit small. I just wish, especially like the tachometer and the speedometer, were just a little bit bigger. All right, let's fire this beast up and see how she sounds. I absolutely love the way these Triumph 3-cylinder engines sound. They just sound so good, whether you're at idle or whether you're out ripping around on the road or the racetrack. They sound so nice. So let's get this bike up for a ride and talk about it. Okay, so riding this bike, one of the first things that I noticed riding it, and this is not the first time I've ridden it, by the way, it's just how small and agile and flickable this thing feels. I think a combination of, the wheelbase, the chassis, the suspension, the 17-inch wheels, everything about it just makes it feel super agile. Like you just think about where you want to go and you're there. It's so much fun. And then we get to, well, let's talk about the ergonomics and the comfort. So the riding position, which you've already seen, is very neutral and very nice. Like I was worried that it might feel kind of cramped, but I have plenty of leg room. You sit very upright. You just have a little bit of forward lean. The seat kind of holds you in place. And yeah, I really like the riding position. The handlebars come back to meet you, so you're not leaning forward like you would on a sport bike. Let's talk about, okay, the mirrors work really well. They give you a really nice view behind. You don't have to look at your own shoulders. The wind protection, so when I put the shield all the way down, I get a nice airflow on my helmet. If I put the shield all the way up, I get a tiny bit of buffeting, but it keeps a lot of the wind off my helmet. And this is a very nice range of adjustment, if you can see that there. So I really appreciate what Triumph has done with the wind protection here. Now a lot of wind does come kind of through here. It's not a fully fared bike. It's not like a full-on touring bike, but it's very good, and the adjustment is really nice to have. So let's cover engine, and then we'll do some braking tests as well. So the engine of this bike. Oh, I have missed these Triumph 3-cylinders so much. Oh, I love the way this thing sounds. So, okay, the experience of riding this engine is that the power is very linear. It seems to make a very flat torque curve, so you have very good response whether I pull away from 3,000 RPM or whether I pull away from 5,000 RPM. You're just met with a very nice amount of power. It's not too much for like newer riders at around 80 horsepower, and it comes on very smooth, but I think it's also enough for more experienced riders like myself to keep themselves entertained. It's not brutally fast. I mean, it's 80 horsepower, but it's the perfect amount of power. Why do you need more than that? You really don't. This thing will go plenty fast. All right, let's talk about the braking. So you do have ABS brakes. The brakes are a little bit on the budget side, but again, this is kind of a budget bike. So let's do a little bit of braking test here. God, I love the handling of this. So the ABS kicks in there pretty well. The brakes are very good. Yep. So I'm happy with the braking performance. I think the average person that's going to buy this is going to be more than happy with the amount of braking that you have. It's not like a track bike. I mean, I'm sure you would overheat them if you were riding this bike on a track or something like that. And then of course we get back to the handling. Oh, this bike is so much fun. You know, I spend so much time riding adventure bikes with 21-inch front wheels and knobby tires. I forget just how good a street bike like this handles on the pavement. It handles so much better than the adventure bikes with the bigger wheels. So if this was my bike, and I sure wish it was, I mean, I'm so tempted to get one of these. I love this motorcycle, I truly do. If this was mine, I would put some sort of aftermarket exhaust just to get a little more of the sound of that triple, because you can feel like the sound is there, it's just a little bit muted, but I mean, they have to do that, that's the law, and they have emissions and noise and all that kind of stuff they have to meet. You can hear the potential in it. Yes. Like I said before, you can use all the power if you're more experienced and you can still have fun. But if you're a newer rider and you want to stick to lower RPMs, like shift it at 4,000, it's so smooth, it's just buttery smooth power, sounds nice, and it's not intimidating, it's not hard to ride. So I could see this appealing to such a broad range of different riders. Okay, acceleration. Do a little bit more. All right, a dirt road. Now, this is really not an off-road bike. They're not marketing it as an off-road bike. Don't buy this bike to do off-roading, okay? Just a disclaimer. However, sometimes you will need to go on dirt roads for various reasons. I mean, 17-inch tires, street tires, exhaust running under the engine, no protection. You know, again, don't do this with the Tiger 660 unless you need to. But because it's a small, light, agile bike, is low to the ground, it's going to be fine. We're not going to have any major issues. Would you want to do extended off-road riding with this bike? No, because you're probably going to get a flat tire, or you're going to put a hole in your exhaust, your engine. But let me show you how it is to just ride this bike on some dirt roads. This road has washboard and ruts and rocks and things like that, but it's not bad. This is like a road that Subarus go on all the time. Now the bike has traction control, which you can adjust, but I mean, it's not going to let you really slide around too much because you know, you've got that, like if I open the throttle all the way through these bumps, nothing's happening. The bike, I mean, look at that, the throttle's just, there's a little bit of acceleration, but it senses that it's slipping and it cuts your power. So let me put this down. So what happens when you try to ride a bike like this on these kind of roads is it's very stiff and it's very bouncy, right? So you have to be careful. You have to keep your speed down. You have to not really hit anything. But the overall feeling I get is that we need more bikes of this size and this weight that are off-road capable, right? I mean, we have the Tenere 700, we have the Touareg 660, we have the KTMs. You know, you have more mid-size adventure bikes now, but I would love to see Triumph do something. I mean, I guess they could use this engine, but anyway, how this works, it's okay. Like, I could do this, I could ride on this road for 5 or 10 miles to get somewhere, but it's not something you're gonna like really particularly enjoy. You're probably going to get through it and it's fine, but again, this is not what it's designed for. But this just goes to show you that, you know, you can ride just about any motorcycle off the pavement if you really want to, especially something like this that has an upright riding position. I mean, the worst bikes to take off-road would be sport bikes and also cruiser bikes, or like big heavy touring cruisers. Those things, I've taken them in the dirt and they're a handful. They're almost scary. But a bike like this, I mean, you can do it, it's fine. Like, but again, I'm not going to suggest buying this and, you know, putting knobbies on it and expecting to rally this thing around. I don't think that's really the best idea. But it's actually doing a lot better than I thought it would. So that was an absolutely awesome ride. I hope you all had as much fun as I did, although probably not, because I'm the one that actually got to ride it. So much fun to ride this bike. Hope you guys enjoyed that. So why don't we do the pros and cons, then we'll get into the competitors and the final thoughts. So there's a lot of things I really like about this motorcycle. The biggest standout to me, I think, well, it's two things that I would say are tied for first place. The engine. It sounds amazing. It has smooth linear power. It has character. It's playful. It gets decent fuel economy. It's not too big. It's not too small. It's got enough power for experienced riders, but not too much for newer riders. I love the engine in this bike. Home run Triumph on that. The second thing I think is tied for me is the overall comfort and ergonomics, the riding position. So everything comes together, from the upright handlebars, the wide seat, the adjustable windshield, the good wind protection, the riding position, enough legroom. It is a fun, playful, you know, street bike that you can use for sport riding, commuting, sport touring, but you could still ride it all day long. It's not uncomfortable like a lot of naked bikes or sport bikes are with their more cramped riding positions. The next thing for me on the pros is going to have to be the handling. The handling is so playful, so agile, it almost reads your mind in terms of where you want to go. I think it has to do with the, you know, the 17-inch wheels, the good street tires, the wide handlebar, and the overall light chassis, and I think it's a short wheelbase or whatever they did here. It's the secret sauce, and it's so nice to handle this bike. It doesn't feel big and ponderous at all, but it also doesn't feel like you're, you know, getting blown off the road like really small motorcycles do. So I really like that. And of course, the final thing that I really have to say, I think the price is really good. Like for just over $9,000, this is a lot of motorcycle. There's really no way to get around that. So what are the things I didn't like? So it's hard for me to come up with things to criticize about this bike, and these complaints are minor. I do wish that the instrumentation, in particular the TAC and the Speedo, were just a little bit bigger, because I feel like they're just a little small, and if your vision's not great, yeah, it could be just a little bit larger. The second thing I will mention, and a lot of people, there's been a lot of chatter on social media and in the comments from other reviews, why doesn't this bike have cruise control and heated grips and more upscale features? I agree, I would like to see that, but on the other hand, this is a $9,000 bike. Like, you have to give Triumph more credit for doing what they did here for $9,000. And when you start adding heated grips and cruise control, it's a lot more complicated than you think. You can't just slap something on there and sell it. They have to certify it, they have to go through all sorts of engineering, and it would add a lot to the cost, and then people would complain that it costs too much for what it is. So I think they're treading a delicate balance, but because it's such a comfortable, practical bike, it would be nice to maybe have optional cruise control and optional quick shifter. Actually, I think there is an optional quick shifter. Heated grips would be good, but again, you know, if you want those features, there are more upscale bikes that do have those things. Let's talk about the competition and how this stacks up. So if I really look at all the motorcycles around this price point, this sort of style, the upright riding position, and the features and the engine size, there's really 3 bikes that come to mind as the most direct competitors. Now you could find other bikes that you might be cross-shopping with, but I have to look at the most direct comparisons. That would be the Yamaha Tracer 7, which we actually don't get here in the USA, unfortunately, the v-strom 650, and of course Kawasaki's long-running Versus 650. So I will put up a little chart here on the screen showing you sort of the vital statistics that you might want to know between these 4 different motorcycles in this category to see the power, the weight, and things like that. Let's talk these through real quick. So the Versus 650 is a bike that I've ridden quite a bit. I love that motorcycle. I agree with Zach Kortz and other journalists who always bring it up as one of the best bikes. But there's some things I don't like about the Versus 650. The engine sounds like a tired vacuum cleaner. Like, I think my Dyson vacuum cleaner sounds better than that bike. It's very uninspiring, very boring, although it's very utilitarian, comfortable. It has all the good qualities you would expect, but it's just not very much fun to ride, in my opinion. It handles well, but the engine sounds like a vacuum and it's just not very fun to ride. Also, that bike is heavier, it doesn't have as much power, it doesn't have some of the features of this bike. This is a much more modern platform. Although the Versus 650 is less expensive, so you're trading off in the... Yamaha's Tracer 7, now I can't speak to that bike as much because we don't get that bike here in the USA. Come on Yamaha, give us the Tracer 7, I want that bike. Anyway, the Tracer 7 has a little less horsepower, but it gives you back a little bit more torque. It's got a parallel twin engine. I love that CP2 engine that Yamaha has. I had it in my Tenere 700. It's one of my favorite engines of all time. The Tracer 7 comes in at a pretty similar price point, and it's actually a little bit lighter than this bike. So I think that's a really good competitor, but I can't speak too much to it because, again, I'm not able to ride it here in the USA. Now let's talk about Suzuki's v-strom 650. People love their v-stroms. I've owned v-stroms, multiple ones, and I love them. I respect the heck out of them. And I have a review on that bike, which I'll link here. Here's the deal with the v-strom. It's an old platform. The suspension is pretty bad. The brakes are, pretty bad. It's more top heavy, it's heavier, it's bulkier, it feels like a larger bike. It doesn't have the good, sweet street manners that this bike does. However, the v-strom's more rugged. It's got a 19-inch front wheel, it's got a little bit more clearance, it's designed a little bit more to go off-road, and I've actually taken v-stroms a lot more off-roading than you ever should with a v-strom, and I've always made it back. So they're pretty rugged, and you don't get that with this bike. So you're gonna have to decide which direction you wanna go. On the street, I would take this 5 out of 5 times, no questions asked on the street. I'd much rather be on this bike. It's better power, smoother, more fun to ride, better brakes, better suspension, better handling, better wind protection, no competition. The v-strom though, for touring, you have more room to put on bags and stuff. It's a larger motorcycle, and for off-road, the v-strom would be better. Final thoughts on the Triumph Tiger Sport 660. This is one of those kind of special motorcycles that doesn't come around too often. I really think Triumph have really nailed a sweet spot between it has enough premium features and technology and performance, but not too much that they make the bike too expensive. It has enough power to keep more experienced riders like myself happy and laughing when we ride, but also it's not so much power and not so abrupt that newer, less experienced riders are going to feel intimidated by it. I like the styling of this bike. The handling is really, really nice and sharp. The brakes are adequate, if not amazing. The suspension is actually pretty decent, even though you don't have adjustments. It's super comfortable. It has a big fuel tank, so you don't have to get gas all the time. The wind protection is really, really good. The adjustable windshield is a huge home run. There's not much to complain about here other than what we've already talked about. I really think a midweight motorcycle like this is probably the best all-around motorcycle for general street riding. If you look at everything from sport touring to commuting to sport riding, running errands, doing some light exploration or very light adventure riding, just an everyday street motorcycle that you can do a lot of stuff with that's not too big and heavy, not too expensive, but it has enough power to go 100 miles an hour if you want to and cruise down the highway without feeling like it's totally just buzzed out. This is the sweet spot, and I hope more manufacturers come to the table with bikes like this. I think in conclusion, if you have the chance to demo this motorcycle, you really owe it to yourself to check it out. I think it's a home run from Triumph. I think they're going to sell a ton of them. And I think if you're looking at something like the Trident 660, you should absolutely be looking at this. Yeah, it's a little more expensive, but you're getting a lot more practicality and comfort with this package. So anyway, I think we should wrap this up. I hope this was enjoyable. Please support Big Rock Motor, and there's ways to do that in the description below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Other than that, ride safe. We'll see you out there.